Hey everybody, SmallgGay. This is Taylor Kitsch, who is a name that's fun to say, in the new Disney film, John Carter, which I just saw this afternoon and I thought I'd review. I haven't reviewed a movie in a while. I loved the John Carter books when I was a kid, when I was around 13, 14 years old. That's a great time to read Edgar Rice Burroughs, a young teenager. And I loved the books so much. And I loved imagining these amazing worlds that Burroughs created. And the great thing about Burroughs, one of the great things about Burroughs, aside from his incredible action sequences, is his vivid imagination. I can remember thinking, Burroughs had creatures that were impossible. They were impossible to even contemplate. You really had to stop and imagine what they looked like the Tharks and the Thoats and the plant men and the white apes and all these creatures that were in the books. And I just always found that so exotic and appealing. Something else about the books, which the Disney film barely touches on, was that they're quite sexy. And in the books, the people on Mars don't wear clothing. and on the book jackets, they always kind of put them in G-strings and pasties. On those great Frank Frazetta paperback novels. But they're just sexy enough to be very exotic to a teenager, but they're not, they're nothing like the average Lady Gaga video. But there's that kind of element of exotic sexiness in the John Carter books, which I always found very appealing. So I was quite excited to see the movie. And this is the kind of deal where, I've been looking forward to seeing it at some point, and I just, happened to be in the mall, and I was there running an errand, and I thought, are they showing that now? And they were, and what time? It started 4 minutes ago. I'm going. And I did, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was wildly imaginative. I loved the fact that the movie is set in the 1800s. This is something interesting that I just learned looking it up on Wikipedia like Soledad O'Brien does. John Carter is 100 years old this year. Isn't that amazing? And so Burroughs wrote him created him in 1912. And I know you didn't need to do the math, but just think about that. And it's incredible that this major franchise, because there were like 12 John Carter books. It was a major franchise in its day, and I don't think they've ever gone out of print, or they've never been out of print for long. This is a major franchise that has never been really visualized before properly. Apparently there was a really cheesy production a few years ago with Tracy Lords. I always called her Deja Thoris, but in the movie they called her Deja Thoris, so I guess I have to say that. I guess that's authorized. Can you imagine Tracy Lords as the Princess of Mars? Now, a lot of people think these concepts are corny. I saw it here in Jersey City, and a lot of people were groaning at some of the things, like whenever they'd say Mars, they'd laugh, like, there's no life on Mars. That's part of the romance of Burroughs. And the fact, I think it was very smart of the Disney people to set the film in the 1800s. And even the Mars technology has kind of a steampunk aesthetic, kind of a Jules Verne steampunk aesthetic, which I thought was really smart. It's also kind of interesting because they added their kind of bow to the Democrat media complex by adding these characters who jump around from planet to planet and cause destruction in the form of war and environmental collapse. I guess they're supposed to be intergalactic Republicans. That was a new element that I did not remember in the books at all. But they added that element to it. And it still would work in with real science fiction because Mars is dying in the movie. So maybe Mars is dead by now. Maybe Mars is dead by the time our Martian probe landed in the 70s. So anyway, it's all good. I thought The film had a terrific pulpy quality to it. The action scenes were so exciting. I loved to see the Edgar Rice Burroughs characters visualized. Like I said, those impossible creatures that have 4 arms, or 10, they're 10 feet tall with 4 arms. They were finally able to create, and they looked better than the preview. The scenes with them in the movie actually looked better than the preview. And the thoats, the things that they ride that had 8 legs, and I forgot what the dog's name is. He's got like 10 legs or something. They were all there, and they all had multiple limbs, and it was pretty cool. So I didn't like the mainstream critics' views of this film, but then I rarely do. I thought they were condescending with little regard to American science fiction tradition, American pulp tradition. I felt that they were completely unfamiliar with Burroughs' work, completely unfamiliar with the John Carter novels, and it was obvious in everything that they wrote. I mentioned the bit about the intergalactic Republicans. That's a minor point in this film. This film is a solid Disney film. I loved how there was an emphasis on family, because the Tharks don't have families, and they're all decanted like in some Soviet system. And family is forbidden, and the ties between Tarkus of Barsoom and his daughter were so strong that they overcame their social conditioning and bonded as father and daughter. It's like, who else is doing that but Disney? For all their flaws, for all the ABC programming, that Good Christian Bitches is horrific. I was going to tell this joke before on Twitter, but I didn't want to upset anybody. I was going to say they were going to do good atheist bitches, but they couldn't find any good atheist bitches. At most, they could find amoral atheist bitches. Pardon my French, by the way. But ABC aside, some of their programming aside, Disney is still the only place for imagination, big budget, exciting studio extravaganzas, and they always put a little bit of that kind of old-fashioned traditional value in their films, even now. So there's always a little bit of that. And I thought that that Kitsch was not the strongest hero, although he was okay. By the end of it, he kind of wore on me. Grew on me, not wore on me, grew on me. And the woman who played Deja Thoris, I thought was terrific. I really liked the framing device. At first it was a little confusing, but there's major payoff at the end, so it all was worthwhile. A lot of the critics found the plot confusing, but maybe they're confused. They're used to a lot of these kind of, anti-American mumbo-jumbo films that they can pretend that they understand, pseudo-intellectual extravaganzas that they can pretend that they understand. But this one was basic, old-fashioned storytelling, and they weren't able to follow it. It's too challenging. So overall, I give John Carter a thumbs up. This isn't Shakespeare. But what it is a whole branch of pulp storytelling that we've not seen dramatized on the big screen. And the whole kind of Edgar Rice Burroughs, the action sequences. You want to know something else that's really funny? I was talking to my father about this. He's a big sci-fi fan. I said, I just thought it was neat how the gravity on Mars was different, so it affected John Carter's movements, and he was able to leap really far because the gravity was much lighter than on Earth. Now, this is a reality of space travel. Remember, the astronauts on the moon had to wear those heavy suits so that they didn't drift away. They had to wear those heavy suits so that they would stay on the planet. My father, who's an amateur astronomer, told me that Mars has half the gravity that Earth does. And we were talking about how ironic that this series of novels that were written 100 years ago, that Mr. Burroughs, who was a genius, he's probably the finest writer of action ever, that Mr. Burroughs was able to understand the laws of gravity and use it to the advantage of his character and create this spectacular action figure that leaps all over the place, defying gravity. I thought it was wonderful to see. I thought it was wonderful and innovative 100 years ago, and we talked about it, how none of these other science fiction films that people take so seriously, the Star Treks and the Star Wars, Star Trek, every planet that they land on has the same gravity as Earth. You know? Every single, the Battlestar Galacticas, all of these franchises that people just think are alien, that people think are so brilliant and everything, none of them have ever dealt with the reality of gravity. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. These critics are ridiculous. They really are. And this is the kind of film, I mean, apparently it did quite well, especially overseas. I don't think it did as well as they were hoping it would. I think it's probably going to be a franchise anyway. A lot of the critics got it wrong as well, that this film combines the first 3 books in the series. No, it's just the first. This is basically Princess of Mars, basically, with some added elements. And apparently they're going ahead and doing Gods of Mars. I think it's great. I think some of you will probably discover it on DVD. I saw it in 3D, and it was really exciting. Another big bonus of seeing it in 3D in the theater is you get to see the 3D preview for the new Ridley Scott movie, Prometheus, which looks amazing, as well as a 3D preview of The Avengers. I am so nerding out here. Hi, J.L. Thorpe. You'll probably watch this one. You like my nerd side. So I'm giving John Carter a thumbs up. It's not for everybody, but if you are in the mood for vintage pulp excitement and exotic thrills, you'll like John Carter. SmallgGay, out of time.